Hi, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Sagewise. I wanted to start out with first I wanted to say, nobody told us our presentations had to be mobile responsive for a smaller screen here. But yeah, so I wanted to start out with a quick story and ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a CEO at a Fortune 500 company who's doing a pilot of blockchain technology. So imagine that you bring in this consultant and they tell you how you can radically improve your business and make it more efficient using blockchain. You can transfer money faster, you can do it safer, you can use smart contracts. And you say, that all sounds great, is there any risks involved? And they said, well, you could lose all the money that your company has. So that seems like a no. I'm not gonna be doing that. You know, we began to see a lot last year, especially, that smart contracts aren't always smart, and sometimes money's lost. There were a number of big issues last year, especially on Ethereum, because it's the most used smart contract platform. There are constantly bugs and scripting issues that can happen. My career was actually one that started out with a lot of low-level coding, and so when Ethereum came around, one of my big concerns was, okay, we're talking about programming money, and we're also using this Facebook mentality of move fast and break things. And if we do that, then potentially a lot of people are gonna lose a lot of money. And that's actually turned out to be true. There are a number of different ways you can lose money using smart contract systems. There's obviously coding errors, there's hacks, there's also, if you're looking at getting an external data source from an Oracle or some other system, because a blockchain can't see outside of itself, sometimes you need to use external data. And that data can be incorrect, which can cause your smart contract to do something you're not expecting. You can also, just as we know in the real world, a lot of regular paper contracts, people end up just wanting to change what they're doing. Amend, modify, and terminate is a very common thing for a traditional contract. One of our advisors advises the World Economic Forum on trade, and she said, you know, traditionally in international contracts, one of the things they often say is the contract is out of date as soon as the pen is on the paper. So that presents a challenge for smart contracts, and so this is our solution. Basically, that something goes wrong with your smart contract, or you have a need to change it because of something that changes in the real world. So you can freeze the smart contract using our SDK, and from that point, you can send the contract to a dispute resolution marketplace, or you can resolve it amongst yourselves. So the most common issue with a contract is generally one that you get together with the other parties of the contract and say, hey, this is wrong, we need to fix this. And usually, as long as you don't hate each other yet, then you're probably gonna do that. So that's actually the most common case, but you always know that if you can't resolve it amongst yourselves, that there's some other layer you can take it to. You can arbitrate it, or you can go to court over it. In the blockchain space, we don't have anything like that. We have this kind of dead end. There's no access to justice. If you look at what happened with the DAO, for example, we had to fork the entire network to try to get justice for people. So, and then lastly, you have this international issue. The issue is, if I'm doing a contract with people all over the world, what is the jurisdiction that we're under? And my co-founder, Amy, who couldn't be here today because she just had a baby, she actually did a lot of research on this around precedents for creating international borderless jurisdictions that you can actually opt into. So when you think about a regular contract, it usually says, if there is an issue, we're gonna litigate this in a certain court, that kind of thing. So we're creating our own jurisdiction that you can use for smart contracts. It's gonna be a lot more friendly. Something to think about that's very particular to blockchain is you don't necessarily know who you're transacting with all the time. So you have this issue where you feasibly can't even go to a court and say, I want to sue this person, because you may not know who they are. There are technical limitations that you're going to have in a court over a smart contract. For example, is anyone on the jury going to know what a smart contract is? Probably not. So at this point, you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to hire expensive professional witnesses to explain. Basically, you don't want to be in the traditional court system with a smart contract issue, right? It's time consuming also to go that way. There's a lack of predictability, and then once you get all done with that, for a smart contract, enforcement is really hard because normally you know who the person is and you can, enforcement's a whole big issue that's almost as big as litigation in the first place, but if you get to enforcement, there's ways that you can take money from people's bank accounts with court orders, et cetera. But as we all know, with the blockchain, you actually can't force someone to remove money from their account. They can just tell you they lost the keys or whatever. So there really needs to be a way to enforce that contract, potentially in a blockchain situation. Just to further reinforce the point I made earlier, last year over $1 billion were lost in smart contract issues on Ethereum. That's a lot more than the year before, and I think that's just probably in line linear with the growth of the Ethereum network. There's a lot of examples of that, but the DAO was really the first big announcement of that. And the funny thing about the DAO was we went from this code is law idea to where the community came together and said, it's not about the code, it's about the intent of the parties. And so we're going to fork the network over that. The code doesn't rule us, we rule the code. So we think this is a huge opportunity. If you look forward into the future and you picture that if there's an easier way to build a contract, instead of using a paper contract, you can use a digital contract and it's actually going to save you time. I think we're going there. We see the whole world digitizing, paper's going away. Traditional systems are being moved by blockchain technology and other things that are coming forward. So if you look at what the value of legal contract services in the world really is, it's in upwards of $10 trillion. When you consider that money in circulation every year is about a quadrillion dollars, and every single transaction that happens on the planet almost is governed by either a paper contract or just an oral contract. If you're sending someone money, you probably have some agreement about why. So when you think about that, if you make contracts easier to form, then more people will probably do that. So the market will actually expand. We really think that the first target that we're after is international supply chain, and the reason for that is there's limited regulation compared to other spaces like financial services. And there's also these huge issues that arise. Some of our partners, actually, that I'll mention in a minute, are in the supply chain space. And the thing that they run into when they go to companies and they suggest using blockchain is the first question they get, which is, what happens when something goes wrong with this? How will I seek recourse? So again, that's where we come into play. My co-founder is a securities attorney, and she's also involved in another number of organizations here in LA. And I am a CTO. My background is computer science. I also started a meetup in LA back in 2014 called the Bitcoin Developers Los Angeles, because I was really focused on how we can use this new technology to change people's lives. I think our advisors are awesome, obviously, but I wanted to mention Colin because he's the former head of dispute resolution at eBay PayPal, and he has a lot of good insight on what happened at the start of the internet with dispute resolution. When you go back to the start of the internet, consider the fact that people were afraid to use credit cards online because they weren't sure if their numbers would be stolen immediately and their money would be lost. And we're having that same kind of transactional confidence issue in crypto. We all take a huge risk anytime we do anything in crypto online, and we know that, and that's kind of a risk-reward thing we're all living with now. But is the mainstream adoption going to occur if people have this fear that they're going to lose their money? We have actually launched our beta SDK of our dispute resolution system, and we have an internal beta now of our dispute resolution marketplace. We're looking to push our product final release live at the start of Q4 this year, and it will be in beta in the third quarter. And these are a couple of our partners. So I have about 30 seconds if anyone has a question. Otherwise, thank you.